Hello and welcome to Critical of Sociology. Today I'm going to be discussing a couple of points raised by an article in this month's edition of Work, Employment and Society titled Running with Wolves or Waiting for a Happy Release, Evaluating Routes to Gender Equality by Beirne and Wilson. In the introduction to the article, the authors list as essentially their basic premise the idea of the pay gap between men and women, and everything that follows really stems from this. I'll just read you the opening couple of sentences from the article, so you can see I'm not in any way taking this out of context. Gender inequality in work and management is persistent. In an era of positive action, and despite 4 decades of legislation enacted to reduce workplace inequality in Britain, the gender pay gap remains stubbornly wide. The Fawcett Society, 2013, recently indicated that women earn 14.9% less than men for the same job, warning that pay inequalities are likely to become more pronounced. In addition, an elaborate structure of glass walls, ceilings and cliffs continue to disadvantage working women. If there ever was a gender revolution in employment, it certainly stalled before sufficient progress was achieved. So, as we can see, really their whole focus is on this apparent discrimination against women, which is self-evident from the pay differential between them and men in the same position. Now, the idea that the wage gap is a myth has been covered more or less to death elsewhere, including a fantastic statistical breakdown by Thomas Sowell and Stephen E. Landsberg's rather convincing thought experiments on the subject, so I won't use this video simply to repeat their arguments. However, in light of the convincing arguments made by Sowell and others, it struck me that it was perhaps worth investigating this 14.9% figure that Beirne and Wilson throw out as a means of proving the existence of discrimination to see just how valid their premise is, and what I discovered here is really going to be the focus of this discussion. The first thing to note is that the reference given in the journal leads to a web page that has now expired. This is not uncommon when dealing with articles that were sent off for review 2 or more years before publishing. This seems unimportant, however, since the cited Fawcett Society have links to similar articles on their front page, and we can presume that they are citing the same research figures here, although possibly updated versions. So, if we download their Equal Pay Day briefing, which cites the organisation's statistics in a bit more depth, we note something very interesting. The Fawcett Society themselves actually list a few of the reasons for the stated discrepancy in pay, including the fact that, quote, men continue to dominate apprenticeships in fields with the best earning potential. In 2013, nearly 13,000 men started engineering apprenticeships while only 400 women did. And you'll note that the year cited, 2013, was the same year as the figure cited by Beirne and Wilson. Now, ignoring any discussion on the possibility of discrimination in being selected for these courses, you can clearly see that the Fawcett Society actually acknowledge that this figure isn't comparing like with like, but comparing jobs of different skill levels. This is important because Beirne and Wilson not only do not state this reason when citing the pay gap figure, but in fact actively conceal it behind the statement that women earn, quote, 14.9% less on average than men for the same job. Emphasis added. So clearly already, either the authors are being intentionally dishonest, or they somehow interpreted the research differently from the very organisation that published it and that they are citing. And it gets worse. Even when talking about women and men in the same job, the Fawcett Society themselves note how some of the discrepancy in pay is due to, quote, as they return from a break to raise children, women find that their opportunities for promotion are reduced and that male contemporaries are being promoted ahead of them, which of course is common sense. If the men have stayed continuously in the job, then they have accrued more work hours and thus should be in line for a promotion sooner than women who have not, based simply on the quantity of work performed. Why this point is worth raising also is that this same journal published an article specifically relating to this phenomenon in the exact same edition only 71 pages later, and yet not one of the editors contacted the authors to appraise them of this effect or to ask if it in any way might have contributed to their stated 14.9% statistic. So, not only are the authors apparently dishonest, but the editors of the journal apparently don't cross-reference the articles they plan to publish, and that's to say nothing of the peer review process, wherein 3 separate individuals did not even bother to fact-check a statistic in the first paragraph of the article. This is a big deal, since now that this false statistic has been published in a peer-reviewed journal, others will cite this article as the source when they reprint the figure, and when critical individuals attempt to verify the citations of these future writers, they will see that they have, in fact, quoted a figure from a peer-reviewed academic journal. Never mind that the article in question states a blatant falsehood and should never have been published. What is ludicrous about this is that not one of the peer reviewers saw this figure of 14.9% for the same work and thought it was so excessive that the original source might be worth checking. For those wondering what the motivation to lie about such a figure could possibly be, you'll be pleased to know that ties in with the next issue I have with the article, which arises on page 229. The premise the authors use here is that women are underpaid in like-for-like work within local authorities because a report from the previous Labour government determined that all public sector jobs should be classified, quote, according to the value they generate, and that under this system, care assistants, who tend to be female, and refuse collectors, who are overwhelmingly male, it was decided should be on a level of pay parity. The authors use the fact that they are not to again imply discrimination. But common sense should tell us that in the same way supply and demand affect the price of goods, it also affects the remittances for working, something even lefty economists will tell you. So if the community is flooded with potential care assistants, but they are struggling beyond belief to recruit bin men, then it makes perfect logical sense to pay bin men more. And given there is nothing actually stopping women from applying for jobs as bin men, or bin women, as the case may be, it would seem that if women are equally happy to do both jobs at the same rate of pay, then we would see a lot more women working as bin men, given the higher remittance. And if they're not equally happy to work either job, then perhaps we can infer that the extra pay to dustmen is to offset whatever it is that makes the job less preferable. So, unless one believes that there is a conspiracy whereby bin men have been taking over recruitment of local council officers, or perhaps rigging local council seat elections, it seems highly unlikely that there is in fact anything unfair going on here beyond the whims of the market economy. The real problem, in fact, is that these alleged scientists seem to believe we should instinctively trust arbitrary decisions by big government over the logic of the market, and that not doing so necessarily constitutes some kind of unfairness which must be corrected. If it sounds as though I'm exaggerating here, or making some leap in logic in an effort to defame these authors somehow, perhaps a remark from Beirne and Wilson's own conclusion is in order, given they here decry the compensation arrangements that, quote, attach significant weight to the interests of higher paid male workers, council taxpayers, and politicians. So you see, freeing us from the horrible discrimination of paying dustmen more than care workers should not be restricted by any concerns for those bothersome taxpayers, who clearly are a part of a problem as well. It's well known that sociologists tend to lean left, but when we're talking about levelling wages due to centrally planned policies, regardless of what the market tells us, and giving no consideration to the rights of taxpayers in achieving this aim, I suspect even Jeremy Corbyn might worry we were leaning a little too far to the red. And when the basis for these claims is a figure that is so blatantly dishonestly cited, we should all be worried about the state of the peer review process in the social sciences. Please like, subscribe, share, and feel free to leave a comment on your own opinions. What do you make of this issue? Thanks for watching.